Today I'm going to be showing how to properly install the airbox to the carburetor on a Suzuki Katana. If you're confused about how to remove the carburetor and the airbox from the bike, I put a link in the description showing a video of how to replace the intake boots, and in the process I remove all of this. After you get your carburetor and airbox off of the bike, I'm going to recommend that you drain it of gas. All you got to do is find these screws right here and one for each carb bowl, loosen it up, and a small hole in the bottom. Gas is just going to start coming right out of it. And this is all the gas that I pulled out of all 4 carburetors. So just pull it out. It's a lot of gas. Just take it out. Now you're going to want to remove the filter that you have right here. And when you're doing that, make sure you don't lose these little things right here. They go in here and hold the filter onto it, and they can come out very easily. Now we're going to remove the airbox from the carburetor. All we got to do is loosen up each one of these and then just pull it straight off. Now that you have the airbox removed from the carburetor, it should look just like this. You want to pay special attention to this right over here and this right over here. If you turn this over, you can see that this thing is quite large and bulky. You want it to face inwards so that it doesn't grab your airbox or get in the way of anything. You might have noticed that I have my throttle cable attached right over here. For me, I had to do kind of like a specialty modification on it, where in there the part broke off, and this red thing is essentially something that I cut up and put on there to make it hold in real good. And another thing is I painted my carburetors. Just don't do that. Never do it. This over here, you can see the damage to the paint is from gasoline when taking it apart. I'm probably gonna end up cleaning mine when I make a video about how to clean your carburetors, but just never paint it, ever. Now let's get started putting your airbox onto your carburetors. The first thing you're gonna wanna keep in mind is all of these parts right here. You want to make sure that none of these get in the way of the carburetor. For example, right along here, it can get caught and then it's gonna essentially create an air leak. Same thing goes with on the top. So in my situation, I decided to put this one on the side, this one on the side, also easily accessible from the top, so that's how you tighten it. But these two, on the other hand, I had to fiddle around with mine and try to find the best fit so that I have the like no air leak whatsoever, and it's on as close to the carburetors as possible. Put your screws the same way I did. I noticed this is just the best way to do it. Another thing you're going to want to keep in mind is the seal for these boots against the airbox. For me, I already have new ones on all of them, and you may or may not want to put new ones on. You can also refurbish them. You can find YouTube channels of how to do that. Essentially, you just bring back the rubber to a closer to new condition. Can't get them looking brand new, but you can get them better. Just make sure that there's no leaks around here and that it fits up real nice. Now we're going to be putting the airbox onto the carburetor. First thing you want to do is put a quick dry fit so that everything is lined up pretty okay-ish inside. Now comes the harder part. I like to tighten both of the sides first and then move on to the center. What you're going to want to do is put one hand inside of here, pushing up so it actually goes in as far as it can. And you just want to make sure that it's as sealed as possible and the airbox goes as far into the carburetor as possible. Once you've managed to install the sides of the airbox, that being this side and the other side, now you're going to want to double check to make sure everything's okay. In my instance, I'm pretty sure I'm using the OEM clamps, so I don't have it as tight as it could possibly be, but it's incredibly tight right now. You're going to want to make sure that the clamp itself is in the center of the grooves on this housing right here. After that, you're going to want to make sure that you don't have anything exposed, and you're going to want to make sure that this thing is actually sealed all the way around. And you're going to want to make sure you check this side and the other side before you move on to the center two. Now that you're confident this one and this one is installed correctly, we're going to move on to the center two. Doesn't matter which one you do first, but you're going to want to do the same thing where you put your hand inside of here and try to push up the entire housing as far into the carburetor as possible, so it's getting a real nice seal. And while you're doing that, you're going to want to tighten this essentially as tight as you can get it without stripping anything. You just want it to be a really nice seal, and you want it to hold on really tight. Now that you've managed to put on your airbox to the carburetors and tighten the center two, double check the center two the same way you check the outside. You're going to want to use a flashlight because if you have an air leak, you're going to have problems. Make sure you put both of these on correctly as well, even though they're harder to see. And also keep in mind how I have each of these screws the same as you did earlier. Make sure that they're all in the correct way and they're not bunching up and hitting anything. So now your airbox should be attached to your carburetor the right way. Now you're just going to want to put in these 4 little pieces, throw the airbox on, and then tighten it up with some screws. Wait till the end and I'm going to explain essentially a few things about air filters and essentially why you never want to use pods on American Katanas. Now that your air filter's on, it's all ready to go into the bike. If you're confused how to do that properly, I put a link in the description. It's called Replace Suzuki Katana Intake Boots. In that, I explain how to replace the intake boots and also put this thing on to the bike. If you're thinking of changing out your air filter or doing anything that would increase the airflow to your carburetor, you're going to want to keep these things in mind. First of all, the American carburetors for the Suzuki Katana do not work very good with pods. I just wouldn't recommend using them in the first place, despite them looking wonderful. I'd love to use them, but I'm not, just because you're going to have to continuously tune it and it's just never going to run as good as it would with the actual airbox. With that in mind, there are other ways to increase the airflow. You can swap to a higher flow filter that still uses the original airbox. For example, K&N makes a real expensive one. And another way to do it is to increase the size or the bore of your exhaust system. Doing that allows the airflow to also increase. If you do decide to do that, you're going to have to adjust the fuel-air mixture. Doing that, you just use this screw right here. The stock setting is 2.5 turns out. Over here, I have an example of a few jets. If you decide to increase the airflow, you're also going to have to increase the gas that's going to the bike. Currently, these are really, really nice ones. They're from Factory Pro. You can see that right over here. I got some real nice titanium needles as well. But the problem is, in my current setup, it would run way too rich if I were to put these parts in it. The last thing I want to leave you guys with is, if you're uncomfortable tuning your bike's fuel-air mixture and possibly rejetting, I wouldn't recommend changing anything to non-stock conditions. I'm using the OEM parts in this case, and I might use a higher flow air filter later on, and then I might just put these really nice jets in. But in the meantime, this is just what everything should look like stock, and this is what I recommend you use if you're not comfortable tuning your bike.